This report is my attempt to describe the character of my 2CE experiences, rather than a specific account of how any particular experience went. I will be comparing and contrasting with psilocybin, as this is the only other psychedelic substance I have experienced, and is also a good reference point as mushrooms are a common and widely available psychedelic. The information in this report would be found most useful by relatively new psychonauts who are considering trying 2CE, or are preparing for an upcoming 2CE experience. Information about me. At the time of writing, I am almost 19 years old and have been extremely interested in psychoactive substances, especially psychedelics, since I got high for the first time at 16. These are the psychoactives I have tried, in descending order of amount of experience with the substance. Marijuana, pretty much daily. Stimulants, prescribed amphetamine salts as needed, much preferred over prescribed methylphenidate, which I used to use for the same purpose. Alcohol, occasionally. Psychedelics, 2CE 4 times. Psilocybin mushrooms 3 times. Opiates, hydrocodone and oxycodone a few times. Codeine with promethazine twice. Still do these once in a while. Smoked heroin tar once. Don't plan on repeating that due to higher addiction danger factor. Nitrous oxide, a few times. MDMA, twice. DXM, once. Now, onto the description of the mind space to which 2CE brings me. 2CE was my first psychedelic and the psychedelic that I have taken the most times to date. Due to its high availability and low price where I live, I've taken it 4 times. Always orally, at doses ranging from 12 to 25 milligrams. The intensity and duration of the experience varies dramatically in this range. I found the 2CE experience to resemble the psilocybin experience but with some key differences. Keep in mind that although I am doing the best I can at describing my experience, psychedelics put your mind through something that is extremely hard to describe with words, as it often involves completely abstract sensations beyond the senses that defy description, and even sensations that seem to manifest in multiple senses at once. Mental qualities. 2CE trips feel, as a friend of mine put it, very calculated. I become much more analytical of the information that I am processing. I often experience, or sense that I am experiencing, a clearer, higher, and/or more complex understanding of information and ideas. This is very prominent when concerning science, especially metaphysical stuff, and the nature of reality and consciousness. I feel like I thoroughly and completely understand things in a way that I simply can't at baseline. When peaking at higher doses, I have felt like I was able to grasp ideas and concepts with very little time spent consciously processing and contemplating them, as if the information itself could more directly enter my mind through my senses. It's as if my brain no longer needs to digest information for very long at all, or process it through mediums such as words or diagrams in my mind. I very much enjoy this. 2CE trips usually feel very manageable, where my thoughts are still very coherent, only enhanced and expanded. It is also usually quite easy to act sober or to suppress the tripping. However, at higher doses, when marijuana has been introduced into the equation, it can become harder to control. This has happened to be a couple of times, and I wouldn't say that I had a bad trip as a result, but the experience was a bit overwhelming during this stage. The first time this happened, I no longer felt as though I had sought out the 2CE trip, but the 2CE had found me, and infiltrated my mind by manipulating the people that helped me procure it. I felt it take control. I got a tangible feeling that the 2CE was telling me something extremely important in spirituality. For me, it was a sense of guilt for my sins and the need to discontinue them. I attribute this to my Christian upbringing, which I have completely rejected. Although I do still believe in a higher form of consciousness outside of space-time that governs all things, simply not the Bible or the Judaic God, both of which are constructs of pathetic, mortal humans. I suspect this would be different for others of different backgrounds. When I experienced this the second time, I found I was able to instantly snap out of it simply by reminding myself that I was only having those feelings because I was tripping. Especially since the origin of this holy message was a psychedelic research chemical, which Christians consider to be a tool of Satan. When I overcame it, I felt very much empowered, and my trip took a very positive turn. For me, mushrooms don't give me a feeling of intellectual enlightenment, but rather one of intense curiosity, bewilderment, wonder, and awe at my surroundings. My perspective is not more analytical, but instead much less so. I feel as though I am seeing everything for what it really is with a fresh, unadulterated perspective. Mushrooms invoke a strong emotional awe at Earth and nature itself. Gaia's presence seems more tangible. I also, quite enjoyably, feel more affected by art. Everything else, especially modern first-world human society and behavior, seems very mysterious and strange, and at times quite funny. Also, on mushrooms I often feel like there's something I want, or something I want to do, yet I never know what it is. I find this absent in 2CE. Despite these differences, I do feel like the nature of the way in which both substances alter my perception is similar. That I more truly understand things. Each substance simply highlights different aspects. Also, I have experienced time dilation on both substances. It seems to pass very slowly. Visual effects. 2CE primarily manifests itself through OEVs. Different areas of my field of vision, as well as objects within it, begin to alternately grow or shrink, and contour lines seem softened. I like to affectionately describe this effect as warplage, and it is increasingly prevalent further away from the center of focus, when peaking at higher doses. I also notice a lot of fractalizing, and fractal patterns manifesting on everything, which can intensify when concentrated on. On one or two occasions I have observed short-lived visuals of organic appearance, such as eyeballs and tentacle-like things, sometimes appearing quite strange and alien, which I found to be quite cool. Many people suggest staying away from mirrors, but I find mirrors to be extremely fun whilst tripping. On 2CE, I have seen my reflection do many things, and have a degree of control over my hallucinations, which is more prominent in the mirror. I have enjoyed observing my facial features shift around, in and out of symmetry. In lower light, I have made my face disappear and reappear at will, even though I was looking straight at it, simply by shifting my visual concentration away from my face without actually moving my eyes. Quite fun. I think this was because I was close to entering a hypnagogic state, as I have observed similar but lay pronounced phenomena without any psychoactive. The CEVs have a similar nature to those which I have observed on mushrooms, but the patterns look a bit more mechanical or systematic, although certainly no less complex or beautiful. I have found that marijuana draws out and enhances visuals on all substances, especially CEVs. The visual effect I gain from psilocybin mushrooms is better described as breathing. Objects fluctuate in size in a similar way, but less uniformly or predictably. It is also more noticeable on the center of focus than on 2CE, and contour lines tend to ripple and wave more. When observing patterns or artwork, it sometimes seems to flow through itself in a way that mimics fractal patterns. Sometimes when this happens I see little skulls and faces. Again, marijuana enhances this. Auditory effects. 2CE does sometimes produce auditory hallucinations for me. It is usually a gentle buzzing or ringing. I've also heard something I can only describe as wobbling or rapidly fluctuating whoosh sound. Sometimes the buzzing and ringing feels like vibrations of energy or light. It is influenced by other sensory input. and is perhaps the closest I've gotten to experiencing synesthesia. Music is much more enjoyable. I enjoy listening to hard-hitting techno and music with heavy backbeats, especially more erratic rhythms. I have a sensation of better understanding the music and the message behind it. Human speech is easier to understand, yet processing it feels a little different and many words sound strange and funny. With mushrooms, the enhancement of music is very similar, but I have not really noticed auditory hallucinations or buzzing of any kind. Words and language, just like on 2CE, seem superficial, strange, and at times hilarious. Bodily effects. 2CE does have a body load. It's manageable, and about as annoying as that of mushrooms, but slightly different. It is a feeling a bit like nausea, but stranger, and there's a sensation of all-around discomfort and difficulty finding a comfortable position. Appetite is highly decreased, although I have found eating fruit and drinking juice to be enjoyable. There's also a strange taste sensation throughout the trip, but it's not always noticeable. The first 2 times I took 2CE, I took it with Sprite, which resulted in a lot uncomfortable, weird tasting burps, mostly during the come-up. I would recommend just taking it with water and perhaps eating a little bit of fruit or salad on top of it. Mushrooms have a very similar body feeling, but the appetite suppression lasts longer, and the weird taste feeling is different. In retrospect, 2CE is an extremely interesting substance, and I believe it is especially enjoyable to the intellectual, science-oriented psychonaut. I'd recommend starting with no more than 15 milligrams, just to get acquainted with it. Also, I'd recommend smoking marijuana only after the trip's peak has passed, and perhaps a hit or two to make the come-up more comfortable, at least during the first trip. I know it's only pot, but THC synergizes with 2CE quite suddenly and powerfully. It's best added to the trip gradually.